Jazzcast Pros.
Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the current or aspiring solopreneur, navigate the messy middle so you can make both an income and an impact. Hi, I'm Rashawn, and I love creating safe spaces for women to be courageous in their dreams. Today on the podcast, we have Coach Saire Davis from Saire Davis Academy. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're located geographically, and who do you serve?
I am Saire Davis. I'm the founder of Saire Davis Academy. I specialize in teaching women's lacrosse athletes how to have elite footwork and develop mental confidence and resilience. I'm also based out of Atlanta, Georgia. I train in the Roswell area part. That's where I train out of.
Awesome. Why I reached out to, I initially found you because anyone who is in my network knows that my daughter plays lacrosse. I coach her team. And so that's kind of how I first found you on Instagram was your women's lacrosse content. But why I reached out to you to see if you wanted to be on the podcast is because, my audience is a lot of women building businesses and entrepreneurship. And I think there is so much overlap of training to become a high level athlete and building a business. There's so much grittiness, behind the scenes work, mental aspect of it. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into that with you today. With a mental aspect of it, what are some things that athletes from the mental side come to you initially struggling with?
Mostly the biggest thing that I hear is definitely confidence and just self-belief in themselves and believing that they can, be great and believing that they could do something that, they don't feel like they can do. That and then also, man, just the mental resilience and the mental toughness behind, when things don't go their way and when they're having to go through adversity or things are not working out either on the field or in life how they expect them to. That's usually what I deal with the most. A lot of parents and kids, come to me struggling with self-doubt, struggling with, just self-worth and self-peace and inner self-love. That's the biggest thing that I help with because I always want to remind kids of what they really have inside of them. And I tell people all the time, I don't train kids or I don't teach them how to, have more confidence. I teach them how to bring out and activate the things that they already have inside of them.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the mental aspect and the resiliency is almost more important than the physical ability as a lacrosse player?
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. Because especially in today's world, in sports world that we're living in, these kids are playing 30, 50, 60 games in a weekend. Yeah. And whereas when we grew up or I grew up playing, football and basketball, I probably played that many games in an entire year. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of kids struggle with that one because mentally they're tired. And so their confidence is low because they don't know how to manage, playing in a bunch of games and having to still go to school and still having to be a kid. And now on top of this, the pressure of wanting to do good and wanting to be successful, they don't know how to really, make that happen because it's so many demands on them in their life and everything. And it starts at a very young age. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Man, if you don't have control of your mind and you don't take care of your mental health, you can't put out a good product on the field or put out a good product in life. You know what I mean? So that's why I focus on that the most.
It's so interesting because the conversations you're having with your athletes are the same conversations I'm having with entrepreneurs that I work with of rest is super important. You can't expect to just go out and use your body all day, every day as an athlete and expect it to perform at 100% all the time. I focus a lot on sales for entrepreneurs, and you can't go out and sell 100% of the time or continually do and produce and not expect that at some point there's going to be a lapse. And so finding that rest, finding that gratitude, that peace, that I am enough sort of aspect of it is so important.
Absolutely. It's funny that you say that because I have a sales background as well.
Oh, cool.
Part of what I do outside of, lacrosse training and everything is leadership and sales consulting.
Mm-hmm.
So I spend a lot of time with, either helping small business owners or same thing you say, helping entrepreneurs with the mindset and the psychology behind sales. It's not just so much about generating a sale or getting a sale and knowing how to sell. It's actually knowing how to not sell. That's the thing that's going to get you a sale. And so it's funny that we have the same background and we relate in that same way and everything.
Yeah. So when you talk about resilience too, like what are some things, because in sales, in life, in athletics, you're going to lose, you're going to not perform well. And so how can someone kind of like do that reset and use some tips around resiliency to kind of bounce back?
I think this is one of the biggest things that in sales and, for the athletes that I work with, a lot of people don't know how to lose the right way because everybody only focuses on winning, right? People don't know how to lose. And one of the biggest things that I teach is what to do when you lose, how to evaluate why you are losing or how to, make the changes and corrections. Most people can't do that because they feel like, okay, hey, I'm not, winning or succeeding in a certain area, then I need to get down on myself. And so I view it as you got to know how to evaluate. It's the same thing I teach my athletes. You got to know how to watch film, right? When we play ball and we play sports, we watch film to, make corrections. We watch film on our games, our practices, and people don't know this about sports. You actually watch more film than you actually play and perform. There's a reason behind that because you spend more time practicing and making corrections and making adjustments than you will do performing. And so the biggest thing that I teach is I teach people how to make the changes, what changes, how to, recognize the changes that you need to make. And it comes down to just being self-aware, man. You have to be able to take yourself out of, the picture frame and get on the outside and realize that sometimes you have to make changes and tweaks, and you have to know what are those changes and tweaks, and you have to know when to catch them and identify them. So that's the biggest thing that it's one of the biggest things that I teach in terms of resiliency is teaching, the athletes and the entrepreneurs and people that I just work with in general on how to identify those necessary changes and where to make those changes at.
Yeah, so much I talk about the first level is awareness, like being aware of who you are, what's going on, what you're doing, what actions you're taking, and then you can make the specific changes and you can be intentional about what you do next. So it's interesting because before we hopped on, you had said like lacrosse is relatively new down south.
Yeah.
You played basketball and football. So how did you kind of end up and I know I saw on your website that you played football in college. So what has your journey looked like up until this point?
So growing up, I grew up in a small town called Byron, Georgia. It's roughly about 2 hours away from Atlanta. I grew up in a very rough neighborhood, drug infected, gang infected, violence infected. And I was a kid, I grew up struggling with trying to fit in and wanting to fit in. And so I found myself following the wrong crowd and hanging with the wrong people and doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. And I ended up getting in some trouble. I got kicked out of middle school and everything just due to I wasn't never a bad kid or I never was a bad athlete. I was always very talented and everything, but I never could showcase my talent because I was always in trouble in school, always not listening to nobody and not doing things that would have helped me and benefited me in the long term. And so football and basketball kind of served as an outlet for me to stay out of trouble. And God blessed me with a lot of talent. And I just used to always work hard and everything and sports, but not on my character in school. And so I ended up, just throughout middle school, I got back in middle school, throughout high school, I just kept working on my game, kept working on who I was as a person, completely changed my attitude around. And I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to play football at Charleston Southern University in South Carolina. And so when I got to college, I only wanted to my goal was to make it to the NFL. Like that was my biggest goal. That was my biggest dream and everything. And I came so close to doing it and making it happen. But unfortunately, that didn't work out. And so after I got done playing football, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life because one, I already ended up going to college and I didn't expect to go to college. Like here I am, a kid that got kicked out of middle school and I somehow ended up getting a full ride Division I scholarship. Like where I come from, people are not getting like scholarship. Like people are getting locked up at an early age and everything. And so when I got to college, that was already a culture shock for me because I had no plans of going to college. And so when I got out of college, now I didn't have really any plans on, what I wanted to do because I still at that time I didn't know. Either it was football or that was it. And so I got out of college 2019. My preacher who I grew up with at my church back in my neighborhood where I grew up from, he kind of had asked me, he was like, yo, man, like you've made it. You've gotten a lot of success. I've watched you go from a snotty-nosed kid getting kicked out of school, disrespecting everybody to the success you have now. And he was like, hey, will you come back and speak to the church just about your story? And so I did that. And people came up to me after the event, after I spoke, and they was like, hey, you need to look into speaking and being a motivational speaker and everything. I didn't want to do that either. You know what I'm saying? And so I started doing it. And I was still working out as an athlete because I was still planning and preparing to play sports after college. Like I was still hoping that kind of had worked out for me. And one day I was working out at a random football field, and lady had came up to me, her and her husband had came up to, they saw me working out and they was like, hey, do you train? And I was like, no, I mean, like, what's up? What do you guys need? And they was like, hey, what you're out here doing? My son needs that. And so I was like, hey, he can come out here and work out with me. I won't charge y'all. I'll just help him. And so I started helping him and everything. And I had no idea who the man and the lady was. And it turned out she had played lacrosse at Maryland. Mm. And so she was like, yo, after the span of about 2 or 3 months of me helping her son, she saw how I helped him with his confidence and his mindset, most importantly. But she saw how I helped him athletically. She was like, hey, this is his first year playing football. He's doing phenomenally well. He's doing great in school. I really, she told me how much I impacted his life. And she was like, I need you to come and do that exact same thing for my lacrosse team. And I was like, lacrosse? I told her, I was like, I don't know. And these were my exact words to her. I was like, listen, I don't know shit about lacrosse. Yeah. She did the same thing you just did. She started laughing. I was like, hey, man, if you can teach me the game, if you can kind of show me what you guys do and show me the techniques and teachings, I'll do it. I was just really, just like when my preacher asked me to come and speak to the kids and her asked me to come and train her son and her kids, I said yes out of a form of obedience. I didn't want to do it, but I was saying yes out of a form of obedience to God because I knew God wanted me to do that, do those different things. And so I started helping her team and working with her girls and everything. And I really kind of found myself again because I kind of had lost myself a little bit in terms of sports being over for me and not knowing what I wanted to do until now. A motivational speaker and training and impacting kids' lives and helping them with their mindset and confidence and their skills. Man, it just kind of like took off for me. A lot of the girls that I was helping, a lot of them ended up going to college. Their team ended up going to the state championship, and they hadn't been to the state championship in 20 years. And so I saw how much of an impact I had on young women. And I was like, man, I want to do this. One, because it was new to me. And I'm a person who I love new things. I love new challenges. I love figuring out things that I don't know. And so, man, I started studying lacrosse and started watching the game and just fell in love with it. And I stopped doing football training. I still speak and everything to different schools and corporations. And I just kept running with it, and it kept blowing up, and I kept posting on social media, and the word kept getting out. And that's how I got into lacrosse. Like people ask me that all the time. Like a lot of my family members and people that I grew up with, they used to joke with me about that when they saw me training lacrosse. They used to tell me like, what your country ass know about lacrosse? That's what they used to say all the time. And I used to tell them I don't know, but I'm figuring it out now.
Yeah.
And so, man, I fell in love with it and kept going, and here we are today, you know.
It's really, I mean, there's so much to say there, but like, I think the lessons I really resonated with is, you know, you graduated college and you had a loss of identity because ever since you were in middle school, you identified as an athlete. And I struggled with that as well. And I went to school to be a teacher and then pivoted away from that. And again, there's so many people who carry these parts of them around as their identity, and untangling those two things and still having self-worth, even though you're no longer in that position, is such a journey and a really important one and a difficult one. And also, like, I think when you went back, when your preacher asked you to come back and speak, like, you were doing it from a place of like what a younger version of you would have loved to have seen and would have been impacted. And like, so many of the women that I work with, they create these businesses for previous versions of themselves. Like they were seeking out something and then they became that, and now they want to share that with other people. And that is so powerful. And it like literally gives me chills when you just hear these stories about people who were struggling or, you know, having a hard time navigating something and to come out the other side and then to empower themselves to like make ripple effects so that other people can be impacted as well, is like, it's so incredible.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Very cool. And what's interesting, I mean, Maryland is like a huge school for lacrosse, but it's interesting that what I have found with lacrosse is like, it's still kind of a small community. And so like it's growing and growing, but like there's definitely that community aspect of it, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was on your social media earlier, and one of your reels that really stuck out to me was like, give yourself permission and to like be incredible and be amazing. And when you're trying to grow in a certain place, like I know I deal with it, and I actually just got a text from a friend asking how I deal with it. It's like imposter syndrome and like always ruminating on like the negative. And so can you just like talk more about like giving yourself permission to succeed and excel?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a total believer of, you know, we all was born with something special. We was all born with something special in us. Like God gave us that. And no matter how hard we try, and we do try very hard to stop that thing from coming out, you can't prevent it from coming out. And it all goes back to, you know, just me and my story. I was always a kid getting in trouble and getting kicked out of school. But when I started changing that and started having success, I realized I really wasn't doing anything new. Like I changed some of my like actions and everything, but I was still the same person. I was still the same snotty nosed kid, just more in a professional way. And it's like, I had to realize that, you know, things started changing for me in my life, and I did a total 360 because a lot of those barriers that I put in front of me, I removed them through doing just the necessary personal work. And I had to do the mental work of telling myself, you know, things will only change for me. Things will only get better for me if I choose to do them. If I choose to make corrections and necessary changes. I think a lot of times, like, we choose to allow self-doubt to creep in, or we choose to allow bad habits to stay a part of our life. And you have a choice to make. Either you can continue to live under that, or you can choose to live under who you really are and what you have inside of you. And the whole piece behind giving yourself permission, man, is, I watch, young kids and young women just not validate themselves in terms of wanting to be exceptional. By definition, the word exceptional means that you are the exception.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order for you to be exceptional, you got to give yourself that room to be exceptional. And a lot of times as people, we don't give ourselves that room. We don't give ourselves room to affirm ourselves. We either look for it from somewhere else, or we just allow self-doubt to win. And giving yourself permission says, I'm not going to let self-doubt, or I'm not going to let my inconsistent habits, I'm not going to let that have power and control over me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
I mean, I don't care who you are, even the most successful entrepreneurs, the most successful athletes, the most successful people in life, fear, doubt, self-criticism, they all still have all of those things. And so when they show up, it's just not allowing them to control your actions and dictate spinning out. And again, back to being aware that they're going to show up and things like that are going to happen in your brain, but just saying, I hear you, I understand you, and I'm still going to do what I know I need to do to get to where I want to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing to do certain things. I tell this to a lot of my athletes and my parents. You have to have an even though mentality. Even though I'm tired, even though I'm frustrated, even though it doesn't look like it's going to work out, even though I don't see myself doing this, you still got to get up and choose to say yes to doing it anyhow. You got to do it afraid. You got to do it scared. You got to do it without knowing how it's going to plan out. You just got to have crazy faith that you can make it happen.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from.
Yeah. I love that so much. And as I was thinking about this conversation, one of the overlaps is all the small stuff that you have to work on. You have a footwork course. And so it's focusing on the little things that are footwork. And again, it's not oh, I'm going to do this course for 2 hours and I'm going to have excellent footwork. It's no, I'm going to spend 10 minutes every day for the next year. And a year from now, I'm going to have phenomenal footwork. And that's the same in business. It's the same in sales. It's the same in life. It's about the small habits that add up to make you exceptional.
Absolutely.
Are you ready for the lightning round questions?
Yeah, we can.
All right. What is a must-read book for you?
One of my best books that I ever read was Atomic Habits by James Clear. Yeah, everybody knows about that. When I read that book, I kind of understood habits from a different standpoint.
The psychological aspect of habits and rewiring your brain, that was so impactful for me.
Yeah.
And question number 2, what does creativity mean to you?
Creativity to me just means having freedom and doing what what works for you and what feels right for you. I train a lot of my players I train them to be creative, and I train them not to be a robot, not to put yourself in a box, or not to think one dimensional. And creativity to me, man, just says hey, I take all of the caps and limits off my mind, and I'm just going to be fully me and not care what anybody has to say, not care how bad I look, not care if I mess up. That's what I mean by being free of all of those negative thoughts, and being free of other people's opinions and judgment of you, of how you look, and just being able to say, I'm going to do me, regardless of how it looks and how it feels. It feels good to me, and that's all I can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. If we could bottle that, we could change the world.
Yeah.
Everyone could release that.
100%.
Yeah. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received was from my grandmother. She played a large part in raising me into the individual that I am today. Again, throughout my story of growing up, in the rough neighborhood and everything, I also grew up without knowing my biological father. I met my biological father one time in person. He was always in prison. And so my grandmother, she was like, hey, you're going to be something special one day. And she told me this one thing, and it stuck with me forever. She was like, whatever you be, I want you to be the best at it. Whatever I put my mind to, whatever I'm doing, just give it my all and be my best self at it. That's the greatest piece of advice that I have. And so everything that I do, I want to be the best, not in the sense of, oh, like I'm better than the next person or I'm better than you. It's just, I want to outdo me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. And that's the first, I mean, I ask these same questions every time I interview someone. And that's kind of the first time someone has said, like, someone spoke words of affirmation, like, to my soul from a young age. And that impacted me. And I think, you know, whether it's words of affirmation to yourself or, you know, something that I try to do with my daughter every day is just like speak to her confidence and speak love into her as a being. And so that's
amazing.
really cool that it's transcended all this time and you're out here being really successful, which is amazing.
Thank you for that. That's amazing that you're doing that for your daughter. It's definitely gonna stick with her. I see a lot of parents when they talk to their kid, they tear their kid down sometimes. And so the fact that you're instilling that love into her, she might not I know she's young. She might not realize what you're doing now, but as she continues to get older, that'll stick with her for the rest of her life. And I know that's why you're doing it. And so, man, I commend you a lot for doing that. And I want to tell you, thank you for doing that to your kid, because a lot of the work that I do, I see a lot of unconfident kids, but the things that you're doing with your kid, those are the things that work and stick with her, you know, more than anything that any coach will be able to teach her on the lacrosse field.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What is something that's on your bucket list?
Man, I'll be 100% honest with you. When I read this question, I tried to come up with an answer. I'm very like how you guys see me on like social media and everything, like, you know, speaking and training and stuff. I'm not like, I'm very like spontaneous. I'm a very spontaneous and wild person. So I got I say all of that to say this. I got a lot of stuff on my bucket list. I don't know. I couldn't find one thing. Probably the craziest thing, my wife will probably kill me for this, but probably the craziest thing that I can think of is I want to own a tiger. I want to have a tiger. Like,
really?
Yeah, I want to have a tiger or a baby lion. Like, I want to be able to have it like in my backyard, and I want to like feed it and everything and take care of it. But yeah, I mean,
yeah. Yeah, and now I see why your wife is probably like, hell no, we're not having it.
Yeah.
I really want to have a donkey, like a pet donkey. And my husband's like, what is wrong with you? We're not getting a donkey. Like, What is the coolest shit you've done in the last year or are currently working on?
The coolest thing that I've done is I finally like started taking investing serious, like investing my money and everything. Over like the last couple of years, I kind of just been on the sidelines and just watching, you know, the investing game, but I never kind of took action on it. And so this year and last year, I finally started taking action on investing my money. And to me, that was very cool because one, it was a plan that I had to get to, but I was procrastinating it. And to finally see myself pull that plug and take action and execute on something, man, it really it gave me a sense of confidence, because I'm not like, I teach people on how to, you know, be confident and mentally tough, but I'm human as well. So sometimes I deal with self-doubt as well. I still have to practice overcoming that self-doubt and overcoming procrastinating. And like you talked about, overcoming just that imposter syndrome, and to see myself fully do it, I was like, yeah, man, like this is where real confidence comes from. This is where you start to see, you start making stuff happen. The more you get in motion, we learned that in science, an object in motion stays in motion.
Yeah.
And so I started doing it and started learning and started reading books and started just taking it serious. And I realized, I was like, man, the stuff that I'm doing now, man, is going to secure a lot of it's going to secure a lot of generations from my family that I won't be no longer here to meet. And so it just made me very proud to finally take action and pull that plug, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I could dive into a whole nother like episode with you around like money mindset. And like, I'm sure that, you know, based on your story, I'm sure that financial security and investing for the long term was not top of mind and not something that you discussed or learned at a young age. And so for you to say, this is what I want to do for my future, for my family's future, for generations. And to like, just like you said, to the words that you say and say, I'm going to do it for myself too, is really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. This was such an awesome conversation. And I think we talked about it a little bit, but like you show mostly up on Instagram. Is there anywhere else you want people to follow you?
No, just on Instagram. Saire Davis Academy. Saire spelled Saire, Davis Davis Academy. Or you can also find me Facebook at Saire Davis, as well as that's my personal Instagram page as well, Saire Davis.
Perfect.
Yes,
awesome. It's so funny. I didn't tell you this before, but me and the other two lacrosse coaches, we have a group text, and we're always sending each other like back and forth different drills we want to do and things that we find on like, different platforms. And yesterday, one of the coaches sent me one of your drills, and I was like, you're never going to guess I'm talking to him on the podcast tomorrow. They were like, what? Oh my God. So
that's amazing. Well, I appreciate you guys for, doing that and using some of the things that I use and everything and teach. Thank you for that.
If you like that episode, please leave a review. Those are always so helpful on whatever platform you listen to this. Until next time, remember that big dreams and small steps will transform your life.